Hello everyone, I'm Andrea, aka Mrs. C, and today I'm going to teach you all how to draw haunted Victorian houses. First, let me tell you a bit about Victorian houses. The Victorian era of architecture lasted from 1837 to 1901. Now, the reason this is because this is the reign of Queen Victoria from 20th June 1837 until her death on the 22nd of January 1901. Victorian architecture is a really singular type of architecture. For those of you who are not sure what architecture is, it's the art or practice of designing and constructing buildings, not just with the exterior, but also with the interior or the inside of the houses. Victorian houses, they have unique designs because it's not really just one simple design, but it looks like many different pieces that come together to make a beautiful house. Victorian houses can have gables or canopies that go over a window or a door. They have turrets or a small tower on top of a larger tower or at the corner of a building or wall, typically the castle. They also have bay windows or windows that project outward from an outside wall. They also have fish scale shingles. And for those of you who don't know what shingles are on a house, they're small, thin pieces of building materials that are often with one end thicker than the other, and they're overlapping each other in consistent rows covering a roof or even the side of a building. There was one Victorian house in my old town of Marietta that had shingles on the side of this one tower, and they were all red. It made it look kind of like dragon scales, and that was really awesome to see. There's also often brick and stone details on Victorian houses, and also gingerbread details on Victorian houses. Now, for the gingerbread details, it's often extra beautiful details that you'll see on the edges of roofs or in other places that give it kind of a frosted or extra decorated look. Victorian houses can have some of these qualities that I described, if not all of them. Now, for my fourth grade class, if you're watching this, you are going to be drawing Victorian houses. Now, do they have to be haunted Victorian houses like what I'm going to be drawing in my video? No, they don't have to be. They could be really happy, normal, but very colorful Victorian houses, or they could be enchanting Victorian houses, maybe like somewhere that a witch or a warlock would live, or if you want to make them look haunted in the spirit of Halloween, go right ahead. Now, the elements of art that we're going to be focusing on for this project are line, shape, and color. Now, I'm just going to be looking for nice, solid color and good craftsmanship, but lines are going to be really important because those are building blocks for the details and shapes. Now, it's not just going to be one big shape that makes the entire house. Our Victorian houses are going to look like they're made out of multiple different shapes that come together to make our houses. Now, one principle of art that we're going to also be looking at is pattern, because I want to see every single different area or part of your Victorian house have a unique pattern. It could be brick or stone details. You could add a bunch of circles to make it look like stonework, also the shingles or the fish scales, and also to make the brick patterns. And you could also add some of your own patterns. I used a lot of stripes as well as some wavy lines and other fun patterns in my Victorian house. For this project, I want you to start off with scrap paper just to practice drawing Victorian houses and get an idea for what you want. Then you will need 8 by 11 inch white or gray paper. That's the size my students will use, but anyone else, you're welcome to use a bigger sheet of paper. You will need pencils, you will need sharpeners and erasers if you don't have those handy already. You will also need black Sharpies, thick or thin, to outline the details when you are finished with your Victorian houses. You will also need whatever coloring supplies you want to use to help bring your Victorian houses to life, and also a comfortable place to work. Let's get started. I'm going to draw the bottom of the first part of my Victorian house that's going to have a porch with steps leading up to it. Now, is my ruler straight? Nope, we don't want it slanted, and you want to really press it down with your hand while you draw the line across the top with the other. There we go. Now I'm going to draw a vertical line to make one side. Keep in mind just how tall you want this first part of your house to be. It's going to look kind of like a square, what I'm doing here. Then I'm going to draw another horizontal line to make the top before I add the roof. I use my ruler to find the midpoint or the line that's right in the middle of the top of this part of my house, and then I used that to decide where the top of the roof would B. Then I'm going to use my ruler to continue making those straight lines. Don't feel any shame in using your rulers to make straight lines. I've been teaching for 8 years and I have a master's, and yet I still want to use a ruler to make sure everything is perfectly straight. Now I'm going to draw a tower on the side of my Victorian house. I drew a curved line at the bottom, and then I used my ruler to make straight vertical lines for the sides of my tower. But notice that I stopped before I got too close to the top because I want to have enough room to make the roof of my tower. I'm going to draw another curved line at the top that looks like a flat smile. Then I'm going to draw an upside down V to make the roof. Next, I will start drawing some vertical lines that go up and down using my ruler to create different sections for my house. The reason why I want to make these sections is so I can create different patterns in them. Now I'm going to make a little roof on top of this section, or it could be another tower, what I'm doing. Only the bottom of the roof, it's not going to be curved like the tower that I made a little while ago. Instead, it's going to look like two V's, one on top of the other. Now I'm going to draw some horizontal lines that will make the bottom of the roof, and then the next horizontal line that I'm making will be the top of the roof. Then I'm going to draw a slanted line that makes the side that isn't hidden by one of the towers. There we go. Next, I'm going to draw the side of the Victorian house that disappears behind the first portion that I made. This is where I added a chimney coming out the top of the roof. I first drew a floating rectangle to make the top part of the roof, and then instead of making the line straight, I drew two curved lines on either side. You can make your chimney have a different shape. I also drew a couple of rectangles that were different heights to make the pipes where the smoke would be coming out of. You don't have to do that either. That was just personal taste. Next, I started to divide my tower into 3 different floors. I drew 2 slanted lines that came in before connecting them with a horizontal line in the middle. I repeated this very close to the top, so this became an area that I could color in. I'm going to repeat this again at the bottom, so then I have all 3 floors, which gives me the freedom to make 3 different types of windows and also 3 different patterns. Now I will use my ruler to divide other parts of my house into different areas. Next, I'm going to make the front porch of my Victorian house. I laid my ruler across the bottom, and then I drew a straight line across the top of my ruler to make that porch. Then I'm going to make some rectangles, also using my ruler, to make steps leading up to the porch. What I did for my steps was I made each step that went down even wider than the last one to kind of give the impression that the steps are getting closer and closer to the viewer. Next, I'm going to draw a square at the very top of the steps that will make the double doors that lead into the house. Next, I made 2 Greek columns, one on either side of the doors, by first making these mini rectangles that are a little wider, and then I made some narrower but taller columns by drawing 2 straight lines up and down with extra lines in between. Now I'm going to start drawing windows. The first window that I'm going to draw has a very basic shape. It's going to be a rectangle, but one that is taller than it is wide. Then I'm going to create a frame around it by drawing another rectangle very close around it. Now I'm going to go over here and make one of those pointed windows, kind of like an upside down U, only it's going to be pointed or pinched at the top, and then draw another shape inside. Now I'm going to draw some simple rectangular windows, but the windows that I make on the sides of the tower here, they're going to be slanted. So this way it makes the tower look a little more 3-dimensional. Then I'm going to draw some more rectangular windows, but try to keep with that theme. The ones that are on the side of the tower, they're going to have slanted lines on top and bottom. If I'm going too fast for some of you, you can pause this video, or you can ask your instructor to pause this video to give you some time to catch up. Next, I'm going to draw one of those upside down U-shaped lines with a straight line across the bottom. Then I'm going to repeat this on the inside to make another frame and another different shape for the window. Now I'm going to repeat the window shape with the pointed top. The next window that I did was circular. I made it in the roof of the top of my tower. I just drew a circle with a slightly smaller circle on the inside. Now I'm going to draw some rectangular windows that are hidden behind the roof in the first part of the house that I did, and then I'm just going to repeat some of the designs that I made. What I'm going to draw next is a dormer window. It looks like it has the bottom of a rectangle, but it's going to have an upside down V on top to make the roof on top of that window. These are often windows that we see coming out of roofs. You can make them all the same size. Once again, I don't want you to feel that you have to repeat every single one of my details, but it should share some of the qualities, whatever it is that you finish and turn in to your sub, for those of you who are in my 4th grade class and are going to be doing this. Next, I will draw some lines that are vertical and horizontal to make the frames for the windows. For this window that I made right here, I drew 3 vertical lines instead of just 2, and then I drew multiple horizontal lines going through about 1, 2, 3. After that, I drew diamond shapes in the middle section of my glass. This gave it a stained glass look, which is something that you see in a lot of Victorian houses that are just so beautiful to look at. I don't know about the rest of you, but my dream is to have a Victorian house with a stained glass window. Because I want my Victorian house to look haunted, I drew wooden planks that were shaped like rectangles that were boarding up some of my windows. Now just draw a couple of equal signs, whether they are straight, horizontal, vertical, or slanted and diagonal, like what I'm doing right here. Try to erase extra lines on the inside. You want to give the impression that there's one board that's crisscrossed with another. Now, once again, you don't have to do this. I just wanted to make my Victorian house look a little more haunted. While drawing this, I realized that I forgot to add some shutters. I'm going to draw some shutters that open and close over the windows. However, if you want to make your house look a little more haunted, you might want to make some of the shutters look like they're broken or like they're falling off of the windows because they're so unkept. Some of them, they did look like they had pieces missing, which I did using random zigzag lines that took out chunks of them. Now, please do keep in mind that there are going to be some horizontal lines going through those shutters at one point. I'm also going to draw some more planks that are blocking some of the windows. You can also draw zigzag lines in the windows to make them look like they have cracked glass. To make curtains in a window, I drew 2 curved lines on either side of the top and then 2 straight lines coming down to make curtains that are being tied off to the side. I made skull door knockers by first drawing circles, one on each side of the top of the door. Then I drew little rectangles coming down from them, which I will turn into teeth by drawing 1, 2, 3 little vertical lines. Then I added 2 circles for the eye sockets. And then I drew 1 big circle coming down from the teeth of each skull, and then a smaller circle can be made if you want to make a thicker door knocker. I made a frame around my door by adding another square that's close around it. I realized that I needed to put circles to show nails that are holding the planks over the windows as well, so I added that in. I added not only a frame in the window, but I drew a cobweb by first drawing a diagonal line, drawing 1, 2, 3 lines that come from the corner of the window to that straight line, and then I connected them with curved lines. You can add webs if you want to make your house look haunted, but you don't have to if you don't want to. I'm also going to add another frame in this window and add a plank to make this one look boarded up as well. I wanted to add a fence across the roof of the house. This is something that I see often in older houses. First, if you do this, you want to draw a horizontal line that goes across the top. It's a floating line. It's not very close to the roof. Then I'm going to draw a vertical line that connects it to the very end. Now I'm going to draw a bunch of little vertical lines connecting the horizontal line I made to the top of the roof, and make sure that you have those lines sticking out above the top because some of them are going to have little spikes. I drew a spire on top of the roof of my tower by drawing 2 lines that made a skinny point, and then I drew a circle in the middle. I next drew some zigzag lines that branched out from each other to make cracked glass above my door. But before that, I did draw a rainbow line, in case you're wondering how I made that dome shape. Now I'm going to draw a line that separates the ground from the sky. You don't have to make it as bumpy and wavy as I did. You can even make it higher, like maybe there's really a long field in the background, but I just decided to make a lower ground, and I'm also going to be adding some more frames and details in my windows. Next, I'm going to add some fish scale shingles. The best way to start that is by drawing what looks like curvy W's and then make another row of curvy W's underneath. Keep in mind to keep the order tidy. Every time that you draw a new shingle underneath, make sure that one of the ends of the shingles is starting at the middle of the bottom of the last shingle that you made. This will give them a neat and tidy look of layers. Next, I'm going to draw some patterns in the different sections of my house. I'm going to start with this area right here with the fancy window and draw some horizontal lines across. Feel free to use a ruler at any point if that helps you make smoother lines. I decided to make some planters on either side of my door. What I did was I drew an oval that was kind of floating, and then I drew some slanted lines to make the top and the bottom. Now, I decided that one of them was going to hold a plant of some sort, but I wanted to make the planter on the right look like it was broken to give it a bit of a spooky, kind of abandoned feel. So I just added a zigzag line. It kind of looks like a cracked eggshell right there. Then I added zigzag lines to make the concrete of the porch look cracked. I wanted to add some fancy detail by drawing a curved line or dome line inside the roof, but the front of it, and then I drew some loops coming out of the bottom middle point. Kind of gives it the look of flower petals, and then I drew an arched line over that. You don't have to do this detail if you don't want to, and you don't have to do the planters either, but really think of some of your own details, what you would like to have sitting on the porch or maybe out in the yard, or what are some extra details. You can ask your teacher, or if you have an iPad or a computer handy, you can look up ideas for Victorian houses or also haunted houses if that's what you're going for. Next, I drew what looked like an upside down V with an extra 2 lines in the middle to make the roots, and then I drew a wacky bumpy line to make the trunk of a spooky tree, and then I made it split halfway up, kind of like a Y, but then each time I made more branches, I just made it split into more Ys. If you want to look like a spooky tree, use very uneven, wavy lines. You don't want them to look perfectly smooth. However, you can make a different tree if you don't want it to look so spooky. You could even add tufts of leaves or flowers or apples if that's what you want. I just made mine look bumpy and unusual. I also drew an upside down U with 3 circles to make a face for a ghost. In this section, I drew a brick pattern, first by drawing horizontal lines that go left and right. After this, I'm going to draw some short vertical lines that go in between those horizontal lines that I made. However, each line that you make in the next row needs to come out in between where you had the vertical lines in the top row. For this midsection of my tower, I first drew slanted lines on the sides, and then I connected them with horizontal lines in the middle. At this point, I started to fill every section I could think of with different patterns like curved lines, vertical lines, horizontal lines. Now right here, I decided to erase one of the windows in the roof, and I decided to draw a curtain that's just billowing in the wind to make it a little more spooky. I just drew 2 curved lines coming out from either side the top, and then I connected them with a wavy line. Now I'm using some random zigzag lines that are uneven to make some grass that's growing under the house, over the hills, and in any place that I choose. I wanted to draw a random uneven staircase. I drew some slanted parallel lines coming down to start my stair path, and then I drew some curved lines making it go in an opposite direction, and then I drew some rectangles for each step that didn't always look straight. Some of them looked a little bit crooked and uneven because I wanted to look unkept as a haunted house. Then I added some stones that lined my step. I wanted to make some gravestones, and I usually begin by drawing an upside down U line, and then I draw a curved line close to one side to show the side of the tombstone to make it look a little more 3-dimensional. Now I'm drawing some grass growing under it, and RIP for rest in peace. Next, follow my steps to make a skull by drawing a circle with a little rectangle at the bottom and draw lines to make the teeth. I'm going to continue drawing some more tombstones following the same steps. This next tombstone that I drew is the shape of a cross, so I drew a slanted rectangle popping out of the ground. Erase those extra lines. Then I drew a tiny little slanted line at the top, and then drew a straight line coming down the side to show how the cross isn't just flat, it's going to be 3-dimensional. Then here I drew the arms of the cross by drawing a little rectangle coming out either side. Then once again I drew the grass growing out underneath the cross. Now I'll finish filling each section in my house with different patterns. Or you can repeat some patterns. There's no rules against that, at least for my students here. If you want to draw some people or spooky creatures that are peeking out from inside the window, you can go ahead and do that. For this one, I just drew some pointed shoulders, and I drew an upside down V that looked like it was kind of curved to make a funky witch's hat, and I made a hook shape for the nose. I also drew a circle by tracing the bottom of a mug, you might have seen that earlier, to make a really big moon, and then I drew a bunch of ovals inside to make craters. Here's how I draw bats. First, I draw what looks kind of like a V that someone sat on, and then I drew some lines that are pointing down. To connect them, I make what looks like a curvy M, and then the capital letter M to make the points for the bat's ears. If you want to add some pumpkins, draw an oval with half of an oval peeking out from either side, and the more ovals you make, the wider your pumpkin is going to look. Then I drew what looked like some tilted capital D's to make eyes, and I drew 2 zigzag lines to make a spooky smile with pointed teeth. To make the stem, you can just draw 2 little curved lines that almost come together, connected with a little oval to make the top of the stem. You can add bushes and flowers or other details outside. I just drew a little bold stem coming out of the ground next to my staircase, and then I drew some wiggly lines that I kept drawing over to make them look darker and darker. Just like how I did my tree, but I made it shorter and with wiggly lines that keep branching out. You can also use zigzag lines to make it look like chunks of the house or tombstones or other parts.